Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Cut Rate Commander, the series where we take a look at low-priced commanders and make budget decks with them. My name is Grazzet and today we'll be looking at the newly completed core exile, Elas il-Kor Sadistic Pilgrim. But before we continue, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content and would like me to continue making more videos like this in the future. And if you're feeling particularly generous, please consider buying me a coffee at the link in the description to keep me caffeinated as I work on more of these builds. Also, be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see who won last week's poll and what commanders you'll be voting for an upcoming episode. So with that out of the way, let's start by taking a look at the commander and playstyle. Elas il-Kor Sadistic Pilgrim is a 2/2 Phyrexian core cleric with Death Touch that costs a white and a black and has the following abilities. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, we gain 1 life. Whenever another creature we control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Breaking down her core stats, Elas il-Kor possesses a low-to-the-ground CMC, a typical stat block for her cost along with built-in Death Touch to make attacking into her or blocking her tricky, and a pair of abilities that care about creatures entering and leaving our battlefield by padding our life totals while reducing our opponents as they do so. Taking a closer look at her first ability, it's the exact same ability we've seen before on other creatures that gain life as our creatures enter play. But just because we've seen it before doesn't make it bad, far from it actually, as it provides a steady stream of life gain to help pad our life totals and proc the menagerie of life gain payoffs our colors have access to, all from the convenience of the command zone to greatly improve that life gain's consistency. Then on the flip side, Elas' second ability functions as your typical death payoff, distributing AoE life loss to our opponents as our creatures die off. And again, while it is an ability we've seen before on other death payoffs, by the virtue of being on our commander ensures that we'll always have easy access to it from the command zone, greatly improving the consistency of Aristocrats builds by allowing them to always have easy access to a damage-dealing death payoff without having to dig for it in the 99. So, as we can tell from her abilities, Elas il-Kor is a commander that cares about lots of creatures entering our battlefield and graveyard, gaining us life while draining it away from our opponents as they do so. So it should come as no surprise that we'll be taking this build in an Aristocrats direction with a heavy focus on token creation, aiming to flood our board with an army of creature tokens and then sack them away for value, all while Elas passively keeps us alive and drains the life out of our opponents. Naturally, that means we'll be running a large amount of creature token creation, ranging from passive token creation that automatically creates tokens for us, mass token creation to get us lots of bodies into play all at once, and activated token creation that we can pump mana into to build up our board, leaving us with no shortage of ways to build up our board state with sack fodder. Then to ensure we have plenty of means to get those tokens into our graveyard, we'll be running lots of both repeatable and one-time sack outlets and effects to turn our creatures into value, as well as plenty of payoffs for when they die to generate even more value, or to inflict even more damage to our opponent's life totals alongside our commander. But that's enough of that, as this newly completed core has a mission to complete for her new masters. She may have once been an exile, a pariah, forced to scavenge to survive, but now she's part of something greater. The Phyrexian oil erased her weak flesh and remade her into a perfect being, and a Sheoldred gave her new purpose, to spread the glory of Phyrexia across Dominaria, and she will not fail in this task, for all must join her in glorious completion. So, now that we know a bit more about the commander and playstyle, let's start looking at the deck itself by starting with the creatures. Starting off in the CMC1 slot, we begin with the free sack outlets Viscera Seer and Karen Feeder, both of which are 1/1s that let us sack a creature, the former letting us scry 1 when we do so, and the latter putting a +1/+1 counter on itself, though it is unable to block, each serving as a manaless instant speed way to send our creatures to the bin to proc our commander and other death payoffs, while also providing decent upside in the form of card selection or growing themselves into legitimate threats. Dockside Chef then joins us as another sack outlet, being a 1/2 that lets us pay 1, a black, and sack an artifact or creature to draw a card. Its sack effect not being free like the previous entrance, but still providing cheap and repeatable card advantage while again triggering all our death payoffs as we sack our creatures away to refill our hands. Then the latter half of this slot switches gears from sack outlets to creatures who can sack themselves away with Benevolent Bodyguard, Selfless Savior, and Vigilant Martyr, all of which are 1/1s we can sack to protect target creature we control, the first granting it protection from a color of our choice until end of turn, the second making it indestructible until end of turn, and the last regenerating it, in addition to letting us pay double white, tap it and sack it to counter target spell that targets an enchantment, all serving as decent ways to keep our commander and other creature-based sack outlets and death payoffs payoffs alive, with the added benefit of being on bodies to proc our commander and other payoffs as they enter and leave play. It's then on to the CMC2 slot and our first round of token creators, those being Hanawar Militia Captain, Piper of the Swarm, and Jadar Ghoul-Caller of Nephalia. Hanawar Militia Captain is a 2/2 that, if we control 4+ creatures on our upkeep, transforms into Westvale Cult Leader, a star whose power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures we have in play, and, on our end step, creates a 1/1 Human Cleric token, quickly transforming thanks to our large creature base and token creation, and providing us with a steady stream of bodies and solid stat block that grows alongside them until we're ready to sack them away for value. Piper of the Swarm is a 1/3 that gives all rats we control menace and either lets us pay 1 a black and tap it to create a 1/1 rat token, or pay 2 double black, tap it and sack 3 rats to gain control of target creature, serving as another source of cheap bodies to grow our board and, if our opponents aren't careful, a means to turn the bodies it creates into a way to permanently steal their best creatures. Jadar is a 1/1 that, on our end step if we control no other creatures with Decayed, creates a 2/2 zombie token with Decayed, giving us yet another steady stream of bodies turn after turn, which can sack themselves as they swing in to proc our payoffs and free up Jadar to create another one on our next end step. It's then back to the sack outlet plan as we move deeper into this slot, with Flesh Taker, Priest of the Forgotten Gods, and Vermin Gorger joining our ranks. Flesh Taker is a 2/2 that, whenever we sack another creature, gains us 1 life and lets us scry 1, in addition to letting us pay 1 and sack a creature to give it +2/+2 until end of turn. Its cheap sack effect allowing us to pump it at instant speed, allowing it to punch well above its weight, while also serving as a decent payoff for both its own and our other sack effects in the form of continual life gain and card selection. Priest of the Forgotten Gods is a 1/2 we can tap and sack 2 other creatures to have any number of target players lose 2 life and sack a creature, while we generate 2 black mana and draw a card, making it a solid once per turn sack outlet that both burns our opponents and disrupts their board states, while ramping us and providing card advantage, all while triggering our death payoffs twice as well. Vermin Gorger is a 2/2 that lets us tap it and sack a creature to have each opponent lose 2 life while we gain 2 life, giving us another free once per turn sack outlet that supplements our commander's life gain and life drain game plan. Then we have one more self-sacking entrant joining us with Cathar Commando, a 3/1 with flash that we can pay 1 in sack to destroy target artifact or enchantment, providing us with some back row removal on a body that we can cast and sack at instant speed for the removal, or cast normally and hold on to until we need it. Then switching gears to Death Matters payoffs, we have Blood Artist, Cruel Celebrant, and Zulaport Cutthroat. The first being a 0/1 that has us gain 1 life while target opponent loses 1 life whenever any creature dies, and the latter two being a 1/2 and 1/1 respectively that have each opponent lose 1 life while we gain 1 life whenever a creature we control dies instead, each tacking on additional drain to work alongside our commanders as our creatures and creature tokens die off to really pile on the damage. And finally, we close out this slot with Corpse Knight, a 2/2 that, whenever a creature ETBs under our control, has each opponent lose 1 life, working very well alongside our large creature base and token creation to help us whittle down our opponent's life totals even more now as our creatures enter play. Now entering the CMC3 slot, we have another trio of passive token generators joining us with Ophiomancer, Doomed Artisan, and Priest of the Blessed Graph. Ophiomancer is a 2/2 that, at the beginning of each upkeep, if we control no snakes, creates a 1/1 snake token with Death Touch, combining very well with our sack outlets to create a free body on each player's turn so long as we keep sacking the snake it creates, while also making it tricky for our opponents to attack into us since we'll always have a 1/1 Death Toucher ready to block. Doomed Artisan is a 1/1 that prevents sculptures we control from attacking or blocking and, on our end step, creates a sculpture token whose power and toughness is equal to the number of sculptures we control, giving us the option to sack the tokens it creates for value, or, if we've accumulated a few of them, sacking Doomed Artisan instead to bring those tokens online and use them to swing into our opponents. Priest of the Blessed Graph is a 1/2 that, at the beginning of our end step, creates X 1/1 Flying Spirit tokens, where X is equal to the number of opponents who have more lands in play than we do, usually creating at least 1 to 2 evasive bodies for us on our turn due to our low number of land-based ramp sources. It's then back to the Death Matters well with another pair of entrants, Tallyman of Nurgle and Morbid Opportunist. Tallyman of Nurgle is a 2/3 lifelinker that, on our end step if a creature died that turn, has us draw a card and lose 1 life, or if 7 or more creatures died, has us draw 7 cards and lose 7 life instead, making it a decent passive source of card advantage as we sack our creatures away, and occasionally a way to reload our hands if needed when combined with wide board states and free sack outlets. Morbid Opportunist is a 1/3 that, whenever one or more creatures die, draws us a card, being limited to once per turn. Its once per turn restriction being easily circumvented by staggering our sack effects between turns, making it more than capable of drawing us 4 cards per rotation very easily. Speaking of sack effects, Woe Strider joins us as our only sack outlet in this slot, being a 3/2 that, when it ETBs, creates a 0/1 goat token, lets us sack another creature to scry 1, and we can escape by paying 3 double black and exiling 4 creatures from our graveyard, reanimating it with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, effectively serving as a scaled up Viscera Seer that comes into play with a free body for us to sack, and we can bring back even bigger if removed once our bin starts filling up. A pair of vampires that care about life gain are then up next with Marauding Blight Priest and Veto Thorn of the Dusk Rose, the former being a 3/2 that, whenever we gain life, has each opponent lose 1 life, and the latter being a 1/3 that, whenever we gain life, has target opponent lose that much life instead, as well as letting us pay 3 and double black to give all creatures we control lifelink until end of turn, both weaponizing the life gain our commander provides to allow us to deal even more damage as our creatures enter play as well as when they leave. And finally, we close out this slot with Burnished Heart, a 2/2 we can pay 3 and sack to put 2 basic lands from our deck into play tapped, providing our build with solid land-based ramp to speed up and fix our mana base, while also gaining us life and draining our opponents as it enters and leaves play to do so. Nearing the end now, the CMC4 slot opens up with some mass token creation in the form of Chittering Witch and Company Commander, each of which create 1/1 tokens equal to the number of opponents we have when they ETB, the former being a 2/2 that creates rat tokens and lets us pay 1 a black and sack a creature to give target creature -2/-2 until end of turn, and the latter being a 2/4 that creates soldier tokens instead and, when it attacks, gives all creatures we control death touch until end of turn, each usually coming down with 3 extra bodies and turning those bodies and others into removal if needed. Then we're back to Death Matters payoffs yet again with Falcon Wrath Noble, Sanguinary Priest, and Vindictive Vampire, the first being a 2/2 flyer that, whenever it or another creature dies, has target opponent lose 1 life while we gain 1 life, the second being a 2/4 lifelinker that, whenever another creature we control dies, deals 1 damage to any target, and the last being a 2/3 that, whenever another creature we control dies, deals 1 damage to each opponent and gains us 1 life, providing us with even more means to capitalize on our creature's deaths alongside Elas by piling on the damage. Erebos Bleak-Hearted then closes out this lot, being a 5/6 with Indestructible that isn't a creature unless our devotion to black is 5+, lets us pay 2 life whenever a creature we control dies to draw a card, and letting us pay 1 a black and sack another creature to give target creature -2/-1 until end of turn, serving as both a decent source of card advantage that we can spend our excess life on, as well as a sack outlet to use as non-destruction removal as needed, all while being a massive hard to remove beatstick once he comes online. And finally, reaching the CMC5 slot and our last 2 creatures, we have Great Unclean One and Sir Conrad the Grim. Great Unclean One is a 4/5 that, on our end step, has each opponent lose 2 life, then creates a 1/3 demon token for each opponent who has less life than us. Between its life loss and all the other sources of life gain and life drain at our disposal, easily creating 3 tokens a turn for us to make use of. Sir Conrad is a 5/4 that, whenever another creature dies, is put into the graveyard from anywhere or leaves our graveyard, deals 1 damage to each opponent, as well as letting us pay 1 and a black to mill each player for 1, making it a Death Matters payoff that dings our opponents both as our and their creatures die off, while also serving as a mana sink if we want to try to get some extra damage in by milling creatures. That covers all our creatures, so let's move on to our instance. Starting off in the CMC1 slot, we have its single entrant, Village Rites, which lets us sack a creature to draw 2, serving as a simple but effective way to convert our tokens into card advantage while proccing our Death Matters payoffs in the process. Continuing this trend, the first half of the CMC2 slot brings us Deadly Dispute, which lets us sack a creature or artifact to draw 2 and create a treasure token, again giving us an instant speed way to sack our creatures away for value, this time in the form of card advantage and ramp. Then the second half of the CMC2 slot brings us the removal option Despark, which exiles target permanent of CMC4 or greater, making it a solid piece of non-destruction removal to help us deal with any dangerous high CMC permanents our opponents throw our way. Moving on to the CMC3 slot, we have another pair of removal options with Generous Gift and Mortify, the former letting us destroy target permanent and giving its controller a 3/3 to replace it, and the latter destroying target creature or enchantment, each providing the build with additional means to deal with common front row and back row threats. And finally, reaching the CMC 5 slot and our last instant, we have Sazat's Will, which has us choose one of the following effects, or both if we control our commander. Have each opponent sack a creature they control with the greatest power, and or exile all cards from our opponent's graveyards and then create X01 Thrall tokens, where X is equal to the greatest power among creatures exiled by it. More often than not, providing us with a decent edict effect that always hits the biggest creature on each opponent's board, followed up by excellent graveyard hate and token creation that denies all our opponents any value from their graveyards while building up our board with sack fodder as it does so. That covers all our instants, so let's move on to our sorceries. Opening in the CMC 1 slot, we have its single entrant, Spark Harvest, which has us either sack a creature or pay an additional 3 and a black to destroy target creature or planeswalker. Its low speed being made up for by its low cost, ability to deal with walkers, and, if needed, allowing us to just pay more to cast it if we have no good sack fodder to fuel it to prevent it from being dead in our hand. The CMC 2 slot then brings us a pair of Orzhov entrants with Blot Out the Sky and Rite of Oblivion. Blot Out the Sky is an X spell that creates X/1 flying inkling tokens and, if X is 6 or more, also destroys all non-creature, non-land permanents, both serving as a way to load up our board with evasive tokens to swing in with or sack, while also giving us the option to level everyone's back row if we have enough mana to pump into it. Rite of Oblivion has a sack a non-land permanent to exile target non-land permanent and has flashback for 2 a white and a black, turning even our smallest token into non-destruction permanent removal and even allowing us to use it twice per game, which more than makes up for its low speed. Then skipping to the CMC 5 slot, we have its lone entrant, Siphon Flesh, which has each opponent sack a creature and then creates a 2/2 zombie token for each creature sacked this way, giving us additional board disruption to harass our opponents that also grows our board state with additional sack fodder for us to take advantage of in the process. And finally, skipping all the way to the CMC 9 slot, we have our last sorcery, Dust to Dawn, a split card whose Dust side costs 2 and double white and destroys all creatures of power 3 or greater, and whose Dawn side has Aftermath, costs 3 and double white, and returns all creatures of power 2 or less from our graveyard back to hand, both its sides synergizing well with our creature's low base power to provide a decent semi-one-sided wipe and recursion for the vast majority of our creature base. That covers all our sorceries, so let's move on to our enchantments. Beginning in the CMC 1 slot, we have its singular entrant, Vampiric Rites, starting us off, which lets us pay 1 a black and sack a creature to gain 1 life and draw a card, making it a dirt cheap sack outlet that we can repeatedly use to turn our tokens into card advantage and life gain, all while proccing our other death payoffs for even more value and or damage. It's then on to the CMC 2 slot and some additional token generators with Dreadhorde Invasion, Hidden Stockpile, and Spirit Bonds. Dreadhorde Invasion, on our upkeep, has us lose 1 life and amass 1, while also giving any zombie token we control with 6+ power lifelink until end of turn when it attacks, which will be primarily running for the free body a turn, which we'll be aiming to sack to get a fresh one instead of growing it over time. Hidden Stockpile, at the beginning of our end step if a permanent we controlled left the battlefield this turn, creates a 1/1 servo token, in addition to letting us pay 1 and sack a creature to scry 1. Its token creation allowing us to replace the first token we sack on our turn, while also being a passable sack outlet itself to provide us with low-costed card selection as needed. Spirit Bonds, whenever a non-token creature we control ETBs, lets us pay a white to create a 1/1 flying spirit token, in addition to letting us pay 1 a white and sack a spirit to make target non-spirit creature indestructible until end of turn, taking advantage of our large creature base by cheaply getting extra evasive bodies on board as we cast them, while also providing solid protection to our creature base by sacking the tokens it creates. Then we wrap up this slot with Dawn of Hope, which, whenever we gain a life, lets us pay 2 to draw a card, in addition to letting us pay 3 and a white to create a 1/1 soldier token with lifelink. Its first ability turning our commander's life gain into card advantage as our creatures enter play, while its second ability serves as yet another source of token creation if we have the mana to spare. The first half of the CMC 3 slot then brings us Bastion of Remembrance, which creates a 1/1 soldier token when it ETBs, and, whenever a creature we control dies, has each opponent lose 1 life while we gain 1 life, adding yet another death payoff to our build, this time from the relative safety of the back row, making it that much harder for our opponents to interact with it while it drains them out. The second half of this slot then adds Curse of Restless Dead to our arsenal, an aura curse that, whenever the enchanted player has a land ETB under their control, creates a 2/2 zombie token with Decayed for us, which we can easily stick on the green player at the table to grow our board as they take advantage of their land-based ramp. The CMC4 slot then brings us our penultimate enchantment entry, Court of Grace, which makes us the Monarch when it ETBs and, on our upkeep, creates a 1/1 Flying Spirit token or a 4/4 Flying Angel token instead if we're the Monarch, providing us with some decent card advantage and evasive token creation and potentially some big evasive tokens if we're able to hold on to the crown. And finally, reaching the CMC5 slot and our last enchantment, we have Blessed Sanctuary, which prevents all non-combat damage from being dealt to us or our creatures, as well as creating a 2/2 Unicorn token whenever a non-token creature ETBs under our control. Its passive protection making our creatures and life totals less vulnerable against direct damage effects, and its token creation working very well alongside our large creature base to grow our board. That covers all our enchantments, so let's move on to our artifacts. Our artifacts begin in the CMC1 slot with the Ramp Source's Soul Ring and Wayfarer's Bauble, the former tapping for 2 colorless and the latter letting us pay 2, tap it and sack it to put a basic land from our deck into play tapped, both providing our build with cheap ramp to help speed up and or fix our mana base. Then proceeding to the CMC2 slot, we have even more ramp sources in the form of mana rocks, starting off with Arcane Signet, which taps for any color in our commander's color identity, Orzhov Signet, which we can pay 1 and tap to generate both our colors, Talisman of Hierarchy, which we can tap for a colorless or either of our colors instead if we take a damage, Prismatic Lens, which either taps for a colorless or we can pay 1 and tap to produce any color, and Mind Stone, which taps for a colorless and we can pay 1, tap it and sack it to draw a card. Again, providing our build with more cheap ramp to help outpace our opponent's mana bases and get to our higher CMC spells faster. Then reaching the last of our artifact entries, the CMC3 slot brings us Crowded Crypt, Oketra's Monument, and Relic Vial. Crowded Crypt taps for a black and, whenever another creature we control dies, puts a corpse counter on itself, letting us pay 4, double black, tap it and sack it to create a 2/2 zombie token with Decayed for each corpse counter on it, making it a passable mana rock that's really a ticking time bomb, passively accumulating counters as we sack our creatures until we're ready to crack it for an instant army of tokens, which we can do on our opponent's turns to boot. Oketra's Monument reduces the cost of all our white creature spells by 1, and, whenever we cast a creature spell, creates a 1/1 warrior token with Vigilance, simultaneously helping us take the edge off our creatures' casting costs as well as building up our board state as we cast them. Relic Vial lets us pay 2, tap it and sack a creature to draw a card, in addition to, as long as we control a cleric, having each opponent lose 1 life while we gain 1 life whenever a creature we control dies, serving as yet another sack outlet that lets us turn our creature tokens into card advantage, as well as another life-draining death payoff since Elas is a cleric to pile on the damage to our opponent's life totals even further. That covers all our artifacts, and since we have no planeswalkers in this build, let's move straight to our land base. Starting off with our mana lands, we have Command Tower, which taps for any color in our commander's color identity, Shine Shadow Snarl, which comes into play tapped unless we reveal a plains or swamp and taps for either of our colors, Caves of Koilos, which taps for a colorless or instead either of our colors if we take a damage, Tainted Field, which taps for a colorless or instead either of our colors if we control a swamp, Temple of Silence, which comes into play tapped, taps for either of our colors and scries 1 when it ETBs, Myriad Landscape, which comes into play tapped, taps for a colorless and we can pay 2, tap it and sack it to put 2 of the same basic land from our deck into play tapped, and finally Obscura Storefront, Evolving Wilds, and Terramorphic Expanse, all of which we can sack to put a basic land from our deck into play tapped, the first doing so when it ETBs and gaining us a life, while the latter 2 can be tapped to do so. Then for our utility lands, we'll be running Bojuka Bog and Castle Ardenvale. Bojuka Bog comes into play tapped, taps for a black, and, when it ETBs, exiles target player's graveyard, giving us a silver bullet against graveyard-focused builds from our land slot. Castle Ardenvale comes into play tapped unless we control a plains, taps for a white, and lets us pay 2 double white and tap it to create a 1/1 human token, serving as a means to create tokens from our land base that, while mana intensive, is still a nice option to have if we have the mana to spare. And lastly, we're running 12 plains and 12 swamps as our basics to close out our land base. So, now that we've covered all the cards in the deck, let's take a look at this deck's breakdown. This deck currently has 35 creatures including the commander, 6 instants, 5 sorceries, 9 enchantments, 10 artifacts, 0 planeswalkers, and 35 lands. Looking at the stats that matter to our game plan, we have 24 sources of creature token creation, 15 life loss and life drain effects, 19 sack outlets or one-time sack effects, and 14 death matters payoffs, giving us a substantial number of ways to create tokens and flood the board with bodies, as well as plenty of ways to send those tokens to the bin, turning them into additional damage or value alongside our commander. For general deck stats, we have 12 ramp sources, 11 card draw sources, 12 targeted removal sources, and 2 board wipes, leaving us with a pretty by-the-numbers ratio of core stats. Looking at our mana curve, we have 11 1-drops, 25 2-drops, 16 3-drops, 7 4-drops, 5 5-drops, and 1 9-drop, resulting in a low-to-the-ground curve that aims to get Elas out quickly, followed by token generators, sack outlets, and Death Matters payoffs to work alongside her, building up and breaking down our board state to pad our life totals, generate value, and suck the life right out of our opponents. Currently, this deck is valued at $64.74, not counting the price of basic lands or shipping. This price was calculated by using the cheapest listed marketplace price on TCG Player at the time of this recording. For side grades, Suture Priest warrants consideration as an additional source of life gain and life drain as we and our opponents build up our boards. Selfless Spirit's powerful self-sack effect can help keep our boards intact while simultaneously triggering our death payoffs, and Bantu's Monument is yet another source of AoE drain that can also help reduce the cost of our black-heavy creature base. For upgrades, Skull Clamp makes for a low mana way to generate a lot of card advantage as we sack away our tokens. Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar are both superb free sack outlets to help us ramp even faster. Bitter Blossom is a very solid source of evasive tokens turn after turn to swing in with or sack away for value, and Diabolic Intent is a great way to turn one of our creature tokens into any card from our deck. And of course, the Meathook Massacre serves as another source of life gain and life drain as our and our opponent's creatures die off, while also serving as a decent non-destruction based wipe, making it a spectacular addition and aptly costing us an arm and a leg to put into the build. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end of the video. Firstly, I'd like to thank the channel subs yet again for helping the channel crack the 7.6 and 7.7k subscriber milestones. Thank you all for your continued support, as this channel would be unable to grow without it. Moving on to the results of last week's poll, it looks like the Swamp Lich Radadrabic of Urborg was able to claim the top spot, so look forward to a legendary Reanimator build featuring him next week. Then moving on to this week's poll, it looks like the Brothers' War is finally upon us, and with it, 2 new commander decks. So this week's poll will determine which of the 2 you want to see me cover first, whether it be Urza's Iron Alliance, led by Urza Chief Artificer, or Mishra's Burnished Banner, helmed by Mishra Eminent One. Please cast your vote in the community tab, link in the description, and let me know in the comments who you voted for and what commanders from the Brothers' War you want to see in future polls. Before we close out, again, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, as this channel cannot grow without your support. And if you feel like showing your thanks by keeping me caffeinated while I make these videos, please consider buying me a coffee at the link in the description. And speaking of which, I'd like to thank Art Burns for their generous donation. Thanks for the coffee, Art Burns, and thank you for supporting the channel. And if any of you would like to support the channel in a different way, feel free to check out the other deck text floating around my head if you'd like to see the latest builds, or click on the link above for a playlist of all the Cut Rate Commander episodes I've made so far. And with that, have a good one folks, and stay safe.